This is Victoria Cartagena. I play Renee Montoya on Gotham, and you're listening to Gotham TV Podcast.
Hey, this is Andrew Stewart-Jones. I play Christopher Allen on Gotham, and you are listening to Gotham TV Podcast.
How would Alfred deal with these two visitors to Gotham from Ireland?
Well, I mean, first of all, how did you get to the door? And secondly, I'd grasp you firmly by the elbow and I'd walk you very smartly to the gates, and I might even show you my commando knife. How's that?
You could set the dogs on us as well.
Yeah, well, no, I don't need dogs, mate.
Hi there, this is Derek.
Hi, this is John.
From Gotham TV Podcast. Just wanted to give you a quick intro to this week's episode. We had recorded this episode ready to go and got a very lucky opportunity to speak to Sean Pertwee last minute. So you may have seen that episode come up in your feed, but we had really good fun interviewing Sean Pertwee and wanted to get that interview up as quickly as possible. So we pushed back this episode where we talk about Gotham, the first 10 episodes of it, and what we're looking forward to in the future.
Yeah, we've called it the European Roundtable. That's mainly because it's the perspective from this side of the Atlantic. Mm-hmm. But we hope you enjoy. In the Sean Pertwee interview as well, we introduced at the end of that a competition. It's our first year anniversary of podcasting. Mm-hmm. We want to thank all the listeners to the podcast and all the followers on Facebook and Twitter. A big thank you for all that support and for all the downloads, and we hope you're still enjoying the show.
Do you want to give a bit more detail about the competition itself, John?
Sure. To enter the competition, it's open to anyone. It will run till the end of Gotham on 5. The competition is to leave a review with us on iTunes. You can go to gothamtvpodcast.com/iTunes and leave a review there. You can also leave a review on Stitcher if you want to. But also you can leave feedback on any of the episodes of Gotham as well. And if we discuss them on air, they will also go into the hat. And you can leave feedback at gothamtvpodcast.com. Mm-hmm. You can also tweet us. You can also comment in our Facebook as well. So all different routes for comments or reviews are more than acceptable, obviously.
Yeah.
And the competition essentially will run till, as I said, to the end of the series of Gotham, and then we will draw a winner from the hat on our final episode, review episode of Gotham.
Yep. So I think we believe that Gotham's coming back to 5 towards the end of March, and from that point onward, there'll be 12 episodes to the end of the season. So you've got about 14 weeks probably to get your feedback in and get a review in on iTunes in whatever country you're in. As John said, go to gothamtvpodcast.com/iTunes to go to the iTunes account and leave your review there. If you're leaving it in your own country and you're not in America or in Ireland, where we generally pick up our reviews, just pop us an email to feedback@gothamtvpodcast.com in case we've missed your review. But other than that, looking forward to it. The competition is to win a signed print of a picture of Oswald Cobblepot. Really looks like Robin Lord Taylor.
Yeah, by Christopher Uminga.
Yeah.
And there'll be some other goodies as well that we won't necessarily share at the moment, but we think they're worthwhile.
Definitely. And it's open anywhere worldwide. Pop onto the website, you'll see an image of the Oswald Cobblepot picture. That's the first thing that we've got up there. Have a look and see if you'll look forward to that. One other thing we have introduced in this episode is Chris and Irene, who are both two of our friends who are joining us for this podcast. They will be joining us for our brother podcast, I suppose you'd call it, which is Defenders TV Podcast, a podcast about the Netflix Marvel TV shows. We've had a couple of episodes up, so you can go find those episodes at defenderstvpodcast.com or on iTunes. Again, defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. You can see our first 2 episodes where we talk about the trailer and we talk about our ideas of what we're going to see on the Daredevil TV show, which is the first of the Netflix shows. We did see some footage at New York Comic Con last year, which we speak about on those episodes, but hopefully you'll join us.
Yeah, we'll also be covering over the course of the coming years, aka Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and obviously leading into the Defenders mini-series. Mm-hmm. So it should all be good fun. As I say, it's our brother podcast to Gotham. It's the Marvel to the DC.
Yep.
And you can also follow us on Twitter there as well, at DefendersCast.
That's it.
So just search at DefendersCast and you can follow us there as well.
Yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this introduction to our full cast for the Defenders TV podcast, which is myself, John, Irene, and Chris.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hi, and welcome back to Gotham TV podcast. I'm Derek, one of your hosts.
Hi, I'm John.
And we're on this episode of Gotham TV podcast. We're joined by two friends to talk about Gotham for a European podcast roundtable.
A smorgasbord, if you will.
So first up, joining us, we have Irene. Irene, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Irene. Long-time listener, first-time talker. I'm going to be part of the Defenders TV podcast starting in April with John Derek as well. And I'm on Twitter at AILBY.
Thanks very much. And also joining us, we've got Chris.
Good evening, or morning, depending on where you're listening. I'm Chris. I also co-write theeffect.net, www.theeffect.net. Just getting my plugs in now.
Absolutely. Do it.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Chris_Jones.
Well, welcome on board, guys. For this episode, we're going to be talking about what we liked about Gotham so far, and what we're hoping for the next half of the season. So, as we've said before, the first half of the season, first 10 episodes are broadcasted in the UK and Ireland on Channel 5. The series will be coming back towards the end of March. What we're going to be doing this time is talking about our favourite points of the show. So we're going to start off with our number one point. So Irene, do you want to give us what your first thought of Gotham is? What's your first favourite point of Gotham?
My first favourite point is the Viper episode. I just thought that stood out for me in the first 10.
Excellent. As
being just perfect from start to finish. So it was brilliant.
What kind of elements of the episode would make it better than the other episodes, I suppose?
I think from the way it started, it kind of set up the story really properly. Like time-wise, you weren't going, there should have been more on that, or that bit went on a bit long, or that scene could have been gotten rid of, or, you know, and then at the end, there was Bruce talking to the Wayne board, and, you know, it's like had bits from everybody, and it kind of progressed all the bits of the storyline. You're going to hope it keeps going like this now for the rest of the other 5.
Yeah, great episode. Really, really good episode. John, what's your first point about Gotham?
I was just going to say, I really like the Bruce Wayne and Wayne Enterprises, that whole thing from the Viper as well. I thought that was really good. And just it teased the darker side to Wayne Enterprises with the Viper drug and so on. So that was, that really set up a lot of intrigue there, which I liked as well. But just that dark tone of the show, I've really enjoyed that. It's certainly more violent than I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. I really like the fact that the Wayne's murder in episode 1 had blood. I mean, sometimes it's kind of sanitized loads, but this was much more violent than I thought it was going to be, and I think that's down to sort of the opening tone set by Danny Cannon, and even just the tracking shots of the city of New York standing in as Gotham gives it a real sort of scale. So I really like that. And I think linked in with this, and this is my kind of feeling, is that I like the modern hints. I would say maybe like an homage to Batman 66 that they have in the show. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I think Harvey Bullock's kind of phrases, like he says, "You're a monkey riding on a racehorse," is one of them.
One of my favorites.
To me, it's kind of like the Robin's holy, blah, 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 Batman. It's like that back to Batman 66, and especially that one from The Spirit of the Goat where he goes Holy Ghost on a bicycle. It really ties in nicely, and I think there's some other moments that are modern twists on what Batman 66 did, like Penguin with his cannoli and it's poisoned, or the good old sort of ticking time bomb from Penguin's umbrella. These for me have really worked because they've been handled really kind of freshly and in a modern way.
Yeah. We slightly differ on opinion on some of these, as some of our listeners will have heard. I definitely think the ticking time bomb that looked like something out of a packet in the 60s, out of the studio system in the 60s, it just felt so wrong and so out of place in the episodes. But,
I loved it.
But yeah,
retro chic. I thought
it's kind of good in a way though, because it breaks it up. Like, you know, the is it episode 9 where they're at the armory, and it's really serious, and it's like the face off with the guns, and then it's like this ridiculous music, and you're going, where's that going
Yeah.
from? And it's like, oh, something's going to blow.
Yeah. Love it. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Okay, taking to what John said, I'm gonna go. First part is the actual visual style.
Mm-hmm.
So you've kind of got this roaring 20s kind of Gotham, but then you've got an element of Blade Runner-esque parts on it on top as well, which sometimes can detract, but I think it brings more to it in the end. So I think it will hark back to the Viper episode, where you see there's like two 1920 cars when you first see the Viper, when the Doctor first gives the Viper drug, and then you see Bullock and stuff in their standard kind of almost kind of Blade Runner-esque kind of suit with the Mac on top as well. And I'm going, okay, well, that's what we want. You want this dirty, grimy city, but then when they kind of go to other elements, it's all very posh, upscale, brownstone, New York.
Yeah.
But then you go back to the wharfs in, well, how many episodes you go to the wharf. You just expect fish guts to kind of fly somewhere through. Like, it's just like, that's a dirty, dirty city.
Yeah. Like, you can definitely tell they've taken New York and used it to all its advantages. I've seen so many films that have used New York before, and particularly those settings. You know, considering there's going to be a lot of TV shows that are going to be using New York as their background coming up. I'm wondering how they're going to be able to use it as well as the guys in Gotham have used it. They've really taken that city and turned it back into its dirty self. I think when Danny Cannon spoke to us about the show originally, he was saying that that it's a New York that wasn't rejuvenated by introducing Giuliani. So essentially, this is what New York would be like if the 70s and 80s crime wave had continued all the way through to the 90s. That's why you're seeing a kind of a crossover and a period.
All the homeless people were dead.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. So I think they've really accomplished that. Yeah, really, really good point. And kind of still to my first point. My first point really about the show was the 70s kind of crime look. You can definitely tell there's so many great 70s movies that they've taken influence from, and it's really coming through. Stuff like, obviously Godfather, and into the 80s with Goodfellas, those kind of style of mafia shows, mafia movies. They've really taken that into the show, I think.
There's that timeless quality where, like, you have the period cars, or you have almost like a period kind of costume from 20s, 30s, or the 70s, or 80s, but it's mixed in with the mobile phone or the TV or whatever. Yeah, they've got old phones on the desk in the precinct of the GCPD, but none of it feels out of place. It just feels part of that world, and it kind of works really well.
The radio TVs in the apartments as well,
Yeah.
actually, with the like two knobs at the bottom. It's like,
Exactly, yeah. The one that Harvey almost got crushed by.
yeah.
The old ticking time bomb.
Yes,
It's a ton
okay.
weight, like it's-
You will convince me eventually. The second time bomb's the right one, I suppose. Irene, have you got your second point?
I did like the relationship with Jim and Barbara, but perversely, the reason I liked it is because it all went horribly wrong.
Right.
Like, by episode 10, obviously they're not really together. He doesn't really seem to know where she is, actually, in episode 10.
Yeah.
I really liked the whole thing with her and Victor as well. Victor Zaz.
Yeah.
But and kind of Jim's slow to react, kind of. He didn't seem that bothered. Like, really. You'd think he'd be frantic.
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of like, oh, yeah, that is a thing I have to do as well. But, like, in a minute kind of thing.
Right.
I thought, anyway.
Interesting.
I thought it was good. Because, it was more realistic. I thought that they would completely grow apart, and she's in a different world. She's at home in the apartment waiting for him to come home, and then she's, like, wondering what's wrong with him when he comes home, and he can't tell her. He doesn't want to tell her about any of the stuff that he's going through or seeing during the day. And,
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting relationship, and very much a bone of contention with a lot of listeners and viewers of the show. There's a lot of criticism of the relationship between Barbara and Jim over the course of the first season, isn't there?
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, because I know we're doing the three things that we like and so on, but one of the things that I kind of felt sort of maybe slightly let down by was the Barbara Keane Jim Gordon story. Not because they didn't seem to work individually, but I didn't get a sense of that connection. It was more down to how they were written. I thought you could have actually had Barbara Keane's character in fewer episodes and made more of the episodes then that she was in. She seemed to kind of appear just in her apartment not necessarily doing very much, and then it all seemed...
Well, a lot of drugs. And
well,
drinking,
yeah, but then it just didn't seem to feel that her and Jim were connected enough so that all of a sudden they've kind of split up over something that maybe should have brought them together, or, you know, she wanted to be involved in his line of work, then got a big shock when obviously Butch Gilzean comes in and there's Victor Zsasz as well.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, they're great and they're great scenes, but then his response, as you say, Irene, was kind of like, didn't seem that concerned, really.
He's more concerned when Bruce went missing.
Yeah, and so
It's like,
that to me just didn't work in the way that I felt it should have done. I was hoping they would be sort of this focus of a romance, so that, you know, it's been teased that Marina Baccarat is going to come in as another love interest, that would have much more severe consequences for his relationship with Barbara, and the fact that they are going to get married. So, and now it feels like if Dr. Leslie Tompkins does come in, that's perfectly acceptable because it's all sort of finished and over and done with. That drama of that has kind of gone, really. So I'm slightly let down by that, but I actually think individually both actors are great, but it just didn't seem to connect with me.
Right. Well,
I know what you mean about the time thing. I thought it was a bit disproportionate, all right. Like, when one minute he's not really that bothered, and then he's trying to get her to leave Gotham, and then, like, I don't know, it just kind of seems to ebb and flow.
Yeah, it was a bit confusing, kind of, in terms of emotionally, I think, but...
Yeah. I know what you mean. I think there's probably quite a lot that was going on between the two of them over the course of the episodes, and one of the elements that I feel is they probably didn't give enough time to Erin Richards, screen time, I suppose, in episodes to justify. Like, if you think about it, started off moving to the city with her fiance, or moving back to the city with her fiance. She rekindles an old relationship with Renee Montoya.
Yeah.
It's quite a huge storyline, really, but realistically, over the course of the 10 episodes, it's probably only about 20 or 30 minutes of screen time that she got over the full course of that to tell a huge story of a breakup of a clearly loving relationship, a really supportive relationship as it starts out, and her moving back with her former partner, Renee Montoya. And yeah, probably if they'd had a couple more little scenes here and there over the course of the series, it might have helped it.
Yeah, that dynamic I really liked between Renee Montoya and Barbara Keane. Really enjoyed that. But again, it's not something that seemed to disturb or sort of get Jim down that much, because he was immediately next onto another investigation, or he was concerned, being chased down by Victor Zsasz or something. That moment wasn't allowed to breathe within the show, and I think that was the kind of the problem for me with those more interpersonal relationships. They kind of got subsumed slightly by this week's investigation, maybe, you could argue. And I know that's been a problem for some people of the show, but that, for me, was just maybe not developed like it could have done to get the most dramatic effect from it.
Right.
I actually think it's been done well. Okay. Yes, Derek, you were saying it was like the 20 minutes, 30 minutes of screen time. It's not the most important element of the Gotham. Okay, so it's not the Jim Gordon show. It's the Gotham show. And we know, so they've teased that we're going to have a possible another love interest, which any kind of diehard fan will know that there's allure about this as well. There's triangles, there's breakups, re-breakups, get back together. It's going, even if you go back to the Batman Year One, which seems to be taking a lot of lore from, even with the kind of, and I'll get to my point as well later on, which is the Alfred, World Marine Alfred seems to be pulled in there as well. Yeah. But with this one, they seem to be taking more of personal relationships will always play a back role to Gordon.
Yeah.
It will always be, the first will come duty, second will come the city, third will come his own life.
Yeah. And
we do know that if probably down the line, based on, he has to have Barbara Gordon 2.0, if you want to call it that, their daughter, who becomes Batgirl, then Oracle, and then Batgirl again. So this will bring in, I'll discuss it later, one of my points, but we know they're going to get back together. So, and anyone, even if you're a flighty fan of the show, you're still going to be able to understand that, okay, so she's a ex-drug using, female loving, now male loving wife or fiance. So she's not that big when it comes down to Zaz nearly killed her. So like, honestly,
you can kind of see why he's not the push.
Yeah, so, exactly. It's like meh. And we do know that the story will get better, but I just think it doesn't need to be that played out that much.
No, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. It's not that it needs to be played out. It's just that they've taken the time to introduce them as a couple. The first episode, they were kind of all lovey-dovey on the sofa. It seemed this really perfect relationship. They make the time to have her come to the precinct and him, and for them to have that friction. But in the crucial moments where you feel, because she's been kidnapped by a psychopath like Victor Zsasz, that you should see his true feelings for her come out, even if it's in a 10-second scene or something like that. I just didn't feel you got that. So I think that's more my point about it, is that it just seemed that it was put in on each episode saying this is an important thing. And it may be, as you say, later on in the season. But when she's getting kidnapped by Butch Gilzin and Victor Zsasz, that should be a really dramatic moment for their relationship, because ultimately she ends off leaving him because she can't cope with that.
She did,
and you can see that,
but
but not necessarily for the two of them.
Yeah.
It's kind of, but it's just one of those things that it didn't work for me, I suppose, in the same way. But I liked them. I liked Erin Richards playing Barbara Keane.
You'd like to
it
go
was
to their
more
wedding.
it was more the writing.
I'd like to go to the wedding, definitely. I'd like to stay in that apartment as well.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to listen to the points, because I haven't really thought about it that way, that it comes across that Jim doesn't really care for Barbara. Maybe that is the reason why she left.
Yeah.
Maybe that is, they've played it exactly right, as to Chris's point as well, that maybe they played it exactly right. Maybe she realised that he doesn't really care about her. He cares about his job much more than her, and that's why she's walked out and gone back to the arms of René Montoya. Yeah. So I think that's your second point, John. So I think we're on to Chris now for his second point.
Okay, we're in a decade of origin stories with both. So you have the Flash, you have Arrow, you have the Marvel side, which that shall not be named.
We're not talk about it.
We have Batman Begins, that whole trilogy, the Chris Nolan. We've seen the origin stories of Batman now, about 5-6 times throughout the years. This is a nice way of doing it. We're not seeing Batman's origin, we're seeing his environment's origin, which I like. And they're borrowing from a lot of different lore. Yeah. And they're writing it together well. So with the Arkham episode, we now see that that's going to actually become the Arkham City from the game.
That's true.
Yeah. Literally, it's now affordable housing surrounded by dump, which they're going to put a prison in. Yeah. And that's what the game is about. Then, as I said, year one, Batman, Alfred is, well, they've teased that he can fight with a sword and he can box and he's a bit of a hard ass and he is the Marine. And then
our kick-ass Alfred, yeah.
And then, but they're also teasing Hush in an episode where most people wouldn't get who he is. Diehard fans will and go, "Oh my God, it's Hush!" Yeah. Black Mask, again, teasing it as his having why he chose a black mask, because this is his father in the episode, and they're taking lore and elements and teasing enough that is still making it interesting. Which, if you take all the Batman writers, and there's a good few, and there's a good few good ones, like Long Halloween, Hush, like you can't take everything, but you can take the best bits. Yeah. And if they're writing it together and interknitting it, I think they're doing this the best way. Yeah. And this is kind of why I'm really liking it. They're able to take the best parts of the different origins and cast out the bits where we've all read a comic and went, okay, I understand why you wrote that, but meh. Yeah. So they're getting rid of the meh bits and just going for the gold.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a really good point. I think definitely the show has done a great job of setting up Bruce Wayne himself in the city. I certainly didn't feel that we would see as much of David Mazouz. When the show started, I certainly didn't feel that we'd be coming back to him every episode. Him and Alfred, we've talked about many times how much we really like the interplay between those two characters and the pieces that they pulled from Alfred's past to make him the kick-arse Alfred, as I said, have been really, really good in the show. But once you spread it out into the city and seeing the connections that people like myself and people like Chris who pick it up because we've read tons of comic books and go, that guy whose name was mentioned in that episode, that guy's going to grow up to be Hush, as you said. Yeah. That kind of stuff is great and really good fun. And then when they introduce something that you go, I wonder what that name means. Oh, there's absolutely no connection. They've created that from scratch. They're also doing a great job with that as well. So, so characters like the Spirit of the Goat episode, where we have a brand new vigilante created for the show. I was absolutely riveted to that episode and looking on Wikipedia to find out whether there was any connection at all between that and any comic book I might have missed out over the years. I think they've done a really good job about that. Anybody else want to come in?
I really liked how the young Bruce Wayne and the young Selina Kyle, that interaction in Wayne Manor and how that was done. That, to me, I was thinking, how are they going to do this where it's not going to sort of ruin what grown-up Bruce Wayne and grown-up Selina Kyle have, which is that kind of grey relationship where they kind of trust one another, they love one another, they kind of don't, they're suspicious of one another. That sort of lovely sort of dubiousness of those two characters. And I actually really liked how they were introduced and then how they went on the run together after Wayne Manor was compromised. That to me was really good. And the fact, Bruce Wayne was kind of, pretty straight, and Selina's she's a street urchin and she's kind of a bit more street level and has got, some street cred ultimately. I liked that. I liked how they did that. Yeah.
The one bit from that episode, it took me a second to get it and it was nagging me for hours, is the vase. Do you remember the vase?
All right.
Think about back from the, Batman Returns, when she's in her Michelle Pfeiffer, she's in her Selina Kyle outfit, she's playing with a vase, and Michael Keaton comes in. And that was literally it was annoying me for hours, and I ended up watching it, and there's a hark back there to he started talking about the Ming Dynasty vase.
Right.
And she's still tossing it kind of in her hands.
Yeah. Very interesting. So nice little callback to the original Batman films from the 80s. Yeah, really good. Good spot there, Chris. Good stuff.
So Derek, what about yourself?
Another point for me, I think, kind of, again, it's quite similar to some of the stuff we've discussed here, is, despite some of the episodes really feeling quite standalone throughout the season so far, I loved when there's been connected episodes. So, when we had Spirit of the Goat followed by Penguin's Umbrella, I think, were the two episodes back to back. Where Penguin's Umbrella really succeeded was where it was talking about stuff that was happening from the first episode, second episode, third episode, all the way up, bringing it all together into one episode where, you really couldn't have watched that episode if you hadn't seen the previous 6, and they've been really successful in doing episodes like that. I'm really hoping there's going to be more of them. Whereas in contrast to that, an episode like The Mask fell flat for me because, Chris had mentioned that it's something that it pretends to talk about something that happens in the future, something that's going to happen in 5 or 6 years' time where his son might take up the mantle of the Mask. The episode itself fell completely flat for me because, they introduce a bad guy, he wears a mask, they kill him, and there you go. That's it. End of episode. Why do we even talk about that? It felt like there was no point in it, no connection.
It's not advancing the story.
Exactly.
Really,
it just felt like a total one-off. I'd love if it was something that they were spinning out over the course of a couple episodes, over the course of a season. You see this guy in the background who's manipulating things or who's killing people, and they don't catch him for a couple episodes. That kind of stuff. That's one for me that I felt was kind of, there's been good things, there's been bad things, but overall, when they've had an episode that's connected, it's been great. When they've had standalone episodes, it hasn't really worked as well for me.
I think it's going to come down to the writer. And John, you brought this point up before when we were chatting. Unfortunately, sorry, we were chatting off air. I'm very sorry. And this is what happens when you put like 4 geeks in a room. The writers, there's 6.
There's quite a few writers. Each of the showrunners is a writer for the show, so that's 4 showrunners plus the wonderful Gotham TV writers, who I think there's a team of about 6 that knock out the episodes. And I think so far the first 10 episodes have been written between 8 people. So.
Okay, so there's 8. Yeah. We'll round down to 8. when you have episodes like The Mask, they were written pretty much probably about a year ago at this point, even though, even probably longer, a year and a half. So this is always the same, and I think there's Battlestar Galactica fans will probably remember this, that when they were writing episodes, stuff was happening in real life.
Yeah.
So with The Mask, you have Wolf of Wall Street.
Right.
And then you have elements of Fight Club, and it's always going to pull heavily on other cultural, whatever we want to call it, cultural icons. Influences.
Yeah.
So you're going to have filler. But why not fill it with stuff that everyone's going to automatically... Well, the show should be written for us diehard fans, where, like Batman, we love comics and stuff, but you've still got to... It's on a network, so you've got to try and still pull in people who don't know Batman, aside from probably the Chris Nolan films or the 80s films. So you've got to pull them in with, that's Wolf of Wall Street. I get it.
Right.
And I think we'll probably get to it later. They haven't done the vigilante element too much right now, aside from Goat. For the American listeners, you've probably seen on the Facebooks and the Twitter machines and all that kind of stuff that they are teasing other large costume vigilantes. It's going to take a while for us to see this now, unfortunately, but if you're on social media, you can't not help see some of these teasings. Absolutely. Which it hurts. It hurts so much that we have to wait longer than you guys.
But we still recorded a half-hour episode about an upcoming character that we won't see for about 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. Because we're so excited.
But the other thing, I think they have to intersplice the lore, of which there's a lot, the cultural references, the ones that are going to go for Joe Soap, who are going to get those and be able to come in and see the fun, and then also the cop show element, the vigilante element, the mob element, which other people who watch Sopranos and other big TV shows are going, oh, I love that part of it. Yeah, that's what I think.
That's cool. Any other points on that?
Yeah, I think you have to realise that the first 10 episodes of season 1, they are still finding their rhythm. I mean, it was only going to be 13 episodes. It got extended again to 16 and then to 22. And we've discussed this previously about how, if you think of, say, The Wire, season 3, everyone goes, wow, that whole season. Sometimes shows take a while to get into their groove. I actually think this, in terms of the long game storyline, is very much in its groove. I think it's really well worked out. It's the other stuff going on around it that I think they're actually figuring out at that time. And so for something like Spirit of the Goat, for me, that really worked, how that episodic thing connected. Same with Viper. Whereas for other episodes, they didn't necessarily work for me in the same way, but the through storyline really kind of worked, and it's something I'll probably say is one of my good aspects of this show later on. But so I would agree. I think it also does need its time to find its legs.
I think so, you mentioned in last week's podcast actually that somebody said that Gotham was very full, like it was too soon to be bringing in the other characters that people would recognise. And you're going, well, it's kind of if it's full, it is in a way, it's very full to be giving everybody a bit of time. But like, if that's the way that you look at it, that there's one through storyline and everything else is kind of all these little incidental bits that may or may not affect. But it's still nice to tell the story.
Yeah.
So if you knew you had 22 episodes at the start, obviously it's easier to plan.
Absolutely. Yeah. Take the point, definitely. Irene, do you want to lead us off with your next point about Gotham so far?
Alfred and Bruce's relationship, basically, because at the start, Alfred obviously doesn't have a clue what he's doing, or he's kind of in shock that he's going to have to raise him. And he doesn't know how to be a dad, or he doesn't know, like, he's kind of being too stern because he's really worried about him.
Yeah.
And you're kind of going, cringing, going, no, don't say that to him. Like, or, could you be a little bit nicer? Like, I know you don't want him to be a sissy or whatever.
He just lost his parents.
Yeah, he just lost his parents. Like, it's a bit harsh. Like, and you kind of going, are they going to bring in somebody else, or is this just going to change? And then he softens, and it's really nice that the episode 8 where he's playing with Selena and they're throwing the bagels at each other.
Yeah.
And you can see him at standing at the door, and he's like really surprised, like that, like Bruce isn't just a little serious adult.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, there's definitely kind of his background that we spoke about, the military background, definitely is playing a part in how he thinks he should be bringing up Bruce. But yeah, the softening of
he's going to I'll make a man of him. Like,
absolutely, he's still only 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to come in on this one.
Absolutely.
On Viper, which you were talking about, one of the best parts for me is where Bruce Wayne, for the first time in the show, orders Alfred to do something.
Yeah.
He literally goes, go get that.
Yeah.
And then we don't see it until the end of the episode where Alfred then sits down willingly to help. And this is where I think the beginning of the dynamic of Bruce Wayne and Alfred, which is the master and the manservant, or butler, to Bruce Wayne and the father figure, Alfred, who's completely different, and then the Taskmaster and the soldier, which comes in, and then which all then lead into the further origin of how do we put it?
Batman and Alfred.
Yeah, Batman and Alfred. I don't like
Batman.
using Batman though because he's not going to be there for years, and it's going to hurt me.
I did like how Alfred described his father as being the Batman of the Wayne family. So I like that. That's really good. Any other points about Alfred and Bruce, Lauren?
I think it's the same episode as Chris is talking about there, but the bit where that kind of seemed to catch a lot of people, where they're like, he's sitting down and he's helping him with his investigation, and then Bruce is like, you're like, oh, that's really nice. He's being a bit more understanding and sensitive, and then Bruce is the one that turns around and kind of cuts the legs from him, going, it's an order. Yeah. Don't throw that in the fire. It's an order. It's like, okay. Yeah, go back to being a bit more harsh with him. It's obviously working.
Yeah,
he's fine.
He's been called Master Bruce since the beginning, and he's definitely the master of that household. Definitely. John, do you have another point about the first half of Gotham?
Yeah, I really liked the secondary and supporting or reoccurring guest cast, actually. Okay, maybe some of the names I've got down here, it's debatable whether they're supporting or secondary as such, but I think they've been really strong. I think they've been really enjoyable, and I think that's really added a depth to the show, and just that building onto the main cast. For me, some of them, Butch Gilzean is played by Drew Powell.
Yeah. His
intimidation of Barbara is so great and creepy. It's really, you feel her intimidation there. And I think his loyalty to Fish Mooney, how that comes across, that confidant element, is superb.
Yeah, I'd definitely say that the one thing I think about Fish Mooney's character, I've really enjoyed the build-up. A lot of people haven't, but I think without Butch Gilzean as her backup, I think she'd be nothing. There's such a great playfulness between the two of them. You can tell his loyalty, you can tell how he acts around her is really making her character even better every episode.
I'll disagree with you on
really?
that one.
Interesting.
She's a badass.
Okay, yeah.
See, if you look, so it was one of the very first 2-3 episodes where her voice starts changing.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can hear. So throughout the first 10 episodes or so, she is the Madame. She is the hard as nails. She is. I believe we will start finding more and more about her backstory as the rest of the season continues. But he is an integral part. He's her lieutenant.
Yep.
But she still has an army of other thugs behind her.
I agreed, and maybe I didn't explain myself correctly. Okay. I think it's the actor in the role, Drew Powell, playing off Jada Pinkett Smith, and having a Butch Gilzean in the scenes with her, where she's able to be herself a lot. Yes. The character of Fish comes through much more strongly when Butch Gilzean's in the room with her, where you can hear her speak the way she would normally speak on the street. Whereas when she's working with, when she's with Maroney or with Falcone, you can tell that she's putting on airs. She doesn't do that around Butch Gilzean, and he really helps to draw that out. So yeah, that's my fault for not explaining well.
I kind of think I'm somewhere in the middle there, because I think she's not really a hard ass, and you see that when she's talking to Butch, but she's more aspirational, and she's wishing she was one of the top people, but she's not really.
Yeah.
She's nowhere near Maroney and Falcone, so.
Interesting.
Well, on that as well, I would say Carmine Falcone, the great John Doman, and Sal Maroni by David Zayas are really good as well. I mean, David Zayas plays Maroni really creepily. He's really, again, that big, bulking, intimidating person like Butch Gilzean, but in a different way, more so because he's the boss. And Carmine Falcone, his presence when he's speaking with Jim Gordon in episode 1, and to me, like, his speech to Jim there is absolutely the backdrop and linchpin of the show, that idea of descending into chaos, and that without organised crime and law and order working together, and what's coming down the line is not that at all. You know, those old established things that were set in stone, or so they thought, is now sort of gone. I think they're, again, really strong characters. And one more, well, I've got two more, but the other one is Carol Kane as Gertrude Kappelput as Oswald's mum.
Awesome.
Her weirdness and zaniness is just brilliant.
She is a scene chewer, isn't she? She's
the bath scene. The bath scene was properly
so
disturbing. But I love that off-kilter relationship between the two of them, and it just adds so much to Oswald, to Robin Lord Taylor's performance, to have that additional element. That's where I think it's really solid. And then I'm really glad that Anthony Carrigan, who played Victor Zsasz, came back. I thought that was just going to be a one-off kind of appearance, and I'm really glad he got a reoccurring slot coming back as sort of a fixer and a hitman for Falcone.
Yeah. He's a great character, definitely, and you can tell by the amount we've all talked about Victor Zsasz, you can tell we've all really enjoyed him.
Really charismatic.
Isn't he?
Yeah, and Dean Cedar,
and considering how scary he is, you know, he shouldn't be that charismatic, should he?
No.
I think it's just because he had the Funky Town as his ringtone for his phone. It just cemented him in battle lore forever, really.
I don't know about Zaz. Sorry, just I agree with everything else.
Yep.
Just Zaz, though.
Mm-hmm.
I know when we meet him in the Batman universe, he's a lot more covered in scars.
Yep.
And this could start telling the story, but this is one where I'm going to actually completely go against myself, which is they've created their own lore on Zaz now, in that they're creating that he was the mob. In I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Zaz was supposed to be just a psychotic killer.
Yeah, I think the first time we meet Zaz in the comics, he's actually already a psychotic killer with many, many scars from killing. I think he breaks out of a prison. If I'm somebody's going to correct me on that, I'm sure. But I think he breaks out of a prison after being in prison, after doing many, many murders. So that still kind of fits in with that.
I think it's just I think they're trying to make him too weird.
Okay. In
that the black leather, and he's got his 3 biker clad ladies who are also in there, and there's scenes where he just shouldn't been able to walk freely into GCPD.
Certainly.
So he's not that well known by the GCPD. That we think.
But his boss is, and that's the difference.
But he doesn't say that he's his boss. He just walks up onto a table
but
and
they
jumps.
know. I presume it's something that's known. Like, I think it's the idea that actually the GCPD is a bought institution, and that's where Jim is slightly different, and which rails Harvey Bullock initially, is that, it's a bought institution, so they probably know that he is Falcone's sort of right-hand man, I suppose. I mean, that's what I kind of think, why he could do that. That's why they all walked out in that episode. Someone could have just pulled a gun, a quick shot, and there you go. There's one more criminal off the street kind of thing. But I wonder if it's just that element of being a bought institution, that it's fundamentally sort of rotten at its core a bit.
Remember, all Zaz has to say is, everybody clear out, and they do. They're on the payroll for Falcone. pretty much bald institution would be the right way to put it, I would say.
If they're all on the payroll, why is the set so bad? Do you think they like bring some gold desks in, a bit more bling? Come on.
They can't show off that they're on the payroll, yeah. Chris, do you have another point about? You do have another point.
I have many points. Yeah. Are we going for the good? The good.
Which do you want to go for, good or bad?
Okay, so we touched on it slightly, and this is my only actual downside, which is in the first couple of episodes, and I think you are right, John, that they're finding their kilter, their pace, but there was, and still is to a point, the identity crisis. Is it a cop show? Is it a mob show? Is it an origin show? Is it... There's many different shows that they're trying to be in, and sometimes... Sometimes I think that the campness, which I know you like, takes you out of that moment. It is the holy smokes Batman type lines that takes me out of them sometimes when they're trying to be that dark, gritty elements or the ticking time bomb, which I think visually worked, but having a tick 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 tick, I was like. Really? You're gonna, like, if it's supposed to be this kind of very slightly realistic show, that you're not gonna have a big alarm clock ticking along.
See, he's on my side about the alarm clock.
Well, no, I visually, it worked.
All right.
Audibly, no.
It's like Butch goes in with the nuns. Yeah?
Yeah.
It's another one which...
That was fantastic.
Yeah, that was good. I think... I'm not saying that they've all worked, but I think when they've worked and they've got it right, I think it's I'm surprised that it has worked. That's, I think, maybe more what I should have said. Okay. I'm surprised that those things have stood out to me as being okay within the wider context. But I do agree that they may have not all been successful. I think, even with Harvey Bullock, the fact that sometimes he's been described as being the comedic other half of Jim Gordon, sometimes that maybe is drawn out too much than it should be. But that's my own personal preference. I'd love to see Harvey Bullock still with his Pepto-Bismol on the side of the table and his bottle of whiskey, like you saw in the first episode. I actually think he's cleaned up as they've moved through the episodes, where I prefer him to see him getting scruffier and scruffier. Or maybe he's getting better under Jim, and then he's going to have his big fall somewhere down the line.
Yeah, perhaps he's going to return that way when they're no longer partners and Jim is off working in Arkham. So, yeah, we might see a bit more of a scruffy Harvey, definitely.
A bit of toast crumbs in the beard or something like that.
He doesn't eat, he just drinks and has Pepto-Bismol, doesn't he?
Do they know at this point what type of show they're creating? And that's the bit I worry about.
Right.
Which is, they have... you have so much with this show. You could just make the Mafia with Fish and Marconi and the rest. You could have the weekly death, the kind of whatever way, the weekly murder, and how they're going to solve it. I think they've slightly stepped away from that with the episodic couple of episodes. I think that they're trying to get away from a Law and Order type, special CSI. GCPD type. I want them to go down the route of a more Game of Thrones stuff. Now, don't jump down me. I'm not talking fantasy.
Gotham of Thrones.
Yeah, the Gotham of Thrones, which that's exactly what it could be. Is you have them, they're trying to, who's going to control Gotham? Is it the cops? Is it the mob? Is it the Penguin? Cobblepot, whatever we want to call it.
He's the Penguin. He's definitely the Penguin.
Okay.
I am 100% sure he isn't the Penguin.
Can I just quickly come in there? And this is actually...
This is a really fun discussion. I hope the listeners are enjoying it.
Yeah, this is my third kind of thing that I really enjoyed, because I think where they do know what the show is to do with the mobsters, between the competing interests of Falcone and Maroni and the Penguin rising. And for me, those through storylines throughout the first 10 episodes, that mobster battle and the chaos rising and the instability, have been really good. And they've been really good in episodes where I've maybe not liked the investigation. So Balloon Man is not one of my favourites, for example, but still I thought the through storyline of Oswald in that and his sort of return back to Gotham and him trying to establish himself in Maroni's restaurant, that really built on what had happened in the previous two, and obviously subsequently it adds down the line. But were the storylines such as Penguin's Umbrella and Arkham, and I think the other one was Harvey Dent, where they've kind of collided, the episodic element has collided with that through storyline. I mean, Penguin's Umbrella was fantastic for me. That worked. And Arkham, where it was Penguins just controlling Jim Gordon, it seemed, sort of, and that seemed to have worked. And I think that's where they do know what it is. I think it's some of the other peripheral stuff.
Maybe it goes back again to the time thing, though. Like, I don't know, maybe it's deliberate that they pull you out of it, that they don't want it to be all very Game of Thrones and very dark. Like, nothing good ever seems to happen in Game of Thrones. And if you think it did, you'd find out later it didn't.
Yeah.
Or it did, only to go horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe they don't want that. Maybe it's deliberate that it's to lighten it up, and maybe it's more to do, like I said, with the time of it, that they don't give, you know, necessarily it's not proportionate. Like, so it feels like they're giving more time to the mob one week, and then it's like, oh no, actually it's going to be more cop showy this week. And
yeah. It'll bring in the bigger audience.
Yeah.
You're right. It's about managing the expectations of, you know, at this stage, as we mentioned earlier on, you know, you've got the comic book fans who came on to watch Batman every week. They should have been watching Arrow. This show is not Batman every week, definitely. Arrow is Batman every week. Not as well made, unfortunately, as Gotham, but it is Batman every week. I've said it before. But this show is definitely much more of the setup of the city, and I think it's working really well. It's doing stuff that I didn't think it was going to do. I certainly thought the show was going to be, you know, the Gordon show. It's not been that. It actually has tended to be, these first 10 episodes, the rise of the Penguin, which I think we'll talk a little bit more about in a little while. But yeah, it's been the rise of the Penguin rather than the rise of Jim Gordon into a particular position in the GCPD, which probably would have been quite a boring show if it hadn't been done that way.
And like you mentioned already as well, that like it's been more Bruce than you would think it was going to be.
Absolutely.
Like it's the announcement of Jim as the central character. It's actually not as Jim centric as you would think it would have been.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Especially by episode 10.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Irene, do you have another point, or have I skipped over my point?
You skipped over yours, I think.
Did I skip over mine? Okay. Well, then I'll go into one that John mentioned earlier on, which is my big negative of the first season, which was episode 3, almost in its entirety. I think it's 42 minutes, and I think 38 minutes I hated. It was it's the Balloon Man episode.
That's harsh.
Yeah, no, I pretty much hated the whole episode. So the Balloon Man himself, this was the first vigilante in Gotham. This is the first person that's put on a mask, going to the city, taking out high-profile targets. That episode should have been so much better than it was. We've mentioned it before. The show is now airing on RTE in Ireland. They're on episode 4 now, and I found myself telling people who were first-time watchers of the show, I was telling them to skip episode 3, or at least, if you are going to watch it, make sure you watch episode 4, because that's far better than this episode would let you believe the series is going to get. Which is an awful thing to say. We've covered hours and hours of podcasting on this show, and to have an episode stand out as being the big sore thumb for me, this was the one that it just should have had more weight to it. You know, obviously it's the Balloon Man, so it's quite a light episode. Sorry, not sorry. Not sorry.
If they had had more weight, they couldn't have got him off the ground.
They couldn't have anyway. I've looked it up. That it would take more balloons than are around in the world to lift one human being.
Someone doesn't like it when they research how many helium balloons it is needed to lift a human being off the surface of the earth.
Yep, I did that.
At the time, I did like your suggestion that the whole sort of blimps or zeppelins overhead, like you see in some of the promotional material, the fact that they could have been strung up on those could have worked better. But
I would have loved if they used the zeppelins as a device in the episodes.
But in fairness, the motives of the Balloon Man were good.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the 4 minutes of the episode that I enjoyed, where he explains his motives and his reason behind doing what he was doing, and saying that more people will rise to take up the role of a vigilante. He's setting up the city of Gotham. That's a brilliant 4 minutes. I just wish they'd written the rest of the episode as well as those 4 minutes. But there you go. That's my one bad point.
I don't know. I'm going to argue. I'm going to argue.
You're going to argue that it's my bad point now?
Yes, I will argue that it's... I think the points that you dislike, which is the vigilante, not the setting up of a vigilante, but in terms of how he kills, and that actually will bring more to it later on. So when Bullock shoots the balloon, that's his first step to helping Jim.
Right. Yeah.
That is, because but before that he's like, no, you're out on your own. At that point, he's like, Jim has jumped up, grabbed him, and he's like, I'm not going to let go. Yeah. And that's the first point where I think he gets into it.
Begrudgingly,
but it's still, he does it. Yeah. And I think that's no matter how much gold we want out of this show, there's always going to be a bit of filler. I was going to use something else there, but there's still going to be a bit of filler. And I think, yes, okay, they brought Professor Pig in just for the crack. And
maybe
it was an Easter egg episode.
Yes, okay,
and that is what I loved about it. Yeah, my God, we had the DC's first superhero vigilante, which was the Shadow. Which when Balloon Man had his scarf on and his fedora hat, and then even his name was Langstrom.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
So, which is the Shadow out of one of the original comics.
That's right.
It was Easter egg laden.
Yeah, it was. Perhaps a little too much, but hey, that's my thoughts on it. I'm sorry. That's all right. All right, John, do you want to give us another point about Gotham so far?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed Robin Lord Taylor's portrayal of Oswald Cobblepot. I just thought there's so many different elements in terms of that whole Penguin Rising aspect where, it was central to that through storyline. The reveal in Penguin's umbrella was just brilliant. I loved the way that all came together in that episode. His relationship with his mum, his real sort of sneaky, manipulative portrayal by Robin Lord Taylor is brilliant. How he kind of seemed to just be like this puppeteer for Jim Gordon. I mean, and it all goes back to that kind of collage that you saw in episode 2, Selena Kyle, that has Jim Gordon and you have Patsy underneath it. And that, to me, I still feel we did a lot of time on that collage that he had in that caravan in episode 2, and I still think elements of those are still going to play out. So I just thought what he brought to Oswald Cobblepot was just really, really good. I like the idea that, his trademark walk was because Fish Mooney sort of broke his ankle, that it came from something real. It was all just superb, how he did it. So, I mean, he's been talked about as this breakout star, and I can definitely see it. He's been central to each of the episodes, really, in the first half of this season.
Yeah, definitely a big surprise for me is how central the character is. I've talked about it before, so I'm not gonna harp on again about it. He's definitely breakout for me. How about you guys? What's your feeling on Robin Lord Taylor?
Love him.
Yeah.
I just thought it was great. You're on his side from the very start, and except for when he does come back, you're going, no, what are you doing? And then it's like, oh yeah, remember who it is. He'll be okay. Like.
Yeah. He's been fantastic though, hasn't he, in the show? Definitely. Chris,
I'm actually in full agreement.
Yeah.
I know I'm starting to become the argumentative side of this podcast, but I am. So there's even the little things like every time he kills now, he eats, which I couldn't understand when Robin or Oswald, as we see him, was very small, and I always see him as this Danny DeVito-esque, comic book-esque small guy who's waddly and quite robust. This is a nice polite way of saying it. Nice. So now this is an origin again, which is we can see every time he kills, he's going to start eating and nibbling, and obviously by the end of Gotham, he's going to be a very robust again guy. But then even the snarl, when he started in some episodes where he gets quite evil, there's a hint of Danny DeVito in there, and I think Robin even has come out and said that he drew a lot from Danny DeVito's portrayal.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, he said he'd watched about Batman Returns to the point where he could quote every single line in that movie. He loves the portrayal so much. Yeah. But I'm not too sure about how heavy Robin Lord Taylor is going to get by the end of the show. I think the fangirls might be crying in the aisles if he puts on that much weight by the end of the show. It might just allow him to jump and have one scene at the end when he's a really heavy actor, or really heavy character, maybe. No, interesting. Irene, I think you have another point for us.
Well, the thing that annoyed me most,
okay,
basically, the whole Liza Fish Mooney Falcone story,
really,
just the way it was done more than the actual story. The idea of having somebody sending in a mole, that's fine in itself, nothing wrong with that. But the way that the time, I'm back to this again. Sorry, the time and the way the story was told, I just think there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Really?
Yeah. I thought, Liza, is she feeding back information? Like, we're not really sure what the purpose of having her in there is, unless it's just that there is actually going to be a payoff to Falcone having, like, his mum alive. I don't know. I'm not sure. Like,
yeah, interesting.
And I think another thing is they seem to go out of their way to make some points, and they're quite heavy-handed. And then in other ways, like the thing with Liza, is they just kind of leave it open to interpretation. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm being really literal, but it's never explained. Is she a mole that's feeding back information,
right?
Or is it just a way to kind of subtly undermine the way he's thinking, or to weaken him a little bit? Or I'm not sure.
Okay, all right. I see that, and I do think it's a bit odd. I definitely like it. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but I do think it's a bit weird that Fish made her look like his mother to get into bed with him, essentially, which I think is a bit odd, isn't it? Does anybody else find that element a bit odd? I know they say that you always go for the person that's most like your parents in your relationships, but that's a bit too far, isn't it?
So it's more personality,
Maybe.
I think it's deeper than that. I think that's the whole point. It's supposed to be when he first meets her, he's listening to his favorite song that his mother always sang, and I think that's it. The whole point was grooming almost to trust him, and I think the character will see more. We'll see more of her, hopefully. But I also think that there's an element where it will start to become useless because there's only so much. We know that this rivalry is going to go on for a while.
Yeah.
But they as you said, what is the point of having a mole who is not digging?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we've only seen one episode up to episode 10, which is where she feeds back some form of information.
Yeah.
I think it was in Black Mask.
Or
the Mask.
The Mask.
She gives the paper.
Yeah,
to
the
Fish.
ledger or something.
Which still isn't explained.
Yeah.
Aside from the ultimate downfall, as Fish says.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think she's a Gotham creation. She's
a
not
Gotham original, definitely.
She's we've never. There's a couple of people have heard back of who she could be later on. I don't think so. I think full Gotham creation, just a plot point.
Right.
That can be fulcrumed at a later point.
Okay. What's your feelings on Liza, John?
I think I agree with Chris about that idea that she can be a fulcrum for a later point, because it's episode 10, I think, where the Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot, sort of clicks that she's working for Fish Mooney. There is that whole aspect within the episode Lovecraft, so that all of a sudden what Fish Mooney thinks is her greatest weapon, as she's been saying, is suddenly now, unbeknownst to her, the bigger ball and chain around her ankle, because her mortal enemy, Oswald Cobblepot, now knows and can use that against it or whatever. I think so. In that sense, maybe the original setup for Liza, what she was supposed to be, was maybe a bit of a red herring. Maybe, I don't know.
Because even the whole picking her, like she smashed the other girl's face in or whatever to be the one that got picked, and then like the time that went into even that, like, and then she's training her and everything, and now she's just like there.
Right.
I thought she was going to be a more female assassin. That's what I expected. I thought we were going to have this almost... There's an element of gender swapping in the show that we've seen already with Copperhead being swapped into a female. Yeah. And so I assumed that she was going to be... When I started making connections, I assumed, okay, well, so she's probably going to be some type of assassin that was a man in one of the comic books. So I even started looking for that. I still can't figure it out.
Right. It is definitely the scene that you spoke about, Irene, is definitely one of my favourite scenes of the entire season. The fight between the two girls where Eliza takes on the person you thought who was going to be the pick for Fish and beats her up in about 3 seconds and goes, right, I got the job now, right? Yep, off she goes. A brilliant opening scene. But you're right, to turn her into essentially the servant of Falcone. She just serves him tea, as far as I can tell, for so far, and occasionally gets a little bit of information back. Yeah,
she cooks. She does cook. She makes, as we know, with Zaz, she cooks muffins.
That's right.
She drugs them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, with the tea, she drugs them. Yeah.
That's how they get the ledger. Yeah.
Which even 2-3 episodes later, you'd think he would have noticed. I had some tea and I fell asleep for a while. Yeah. But I
actually thought he had noticed and he just wasn't saying anything immediately because he was playing her to see he was going to get something out of it. No. See,
I'm really interested what the listeners think, because some of them have seen ahead on the episodes, and I'm wondering if we're now talking about something that's completely outdated now by episode 15 or something that you see the full reveal of who she is or what she does.
Yeah.
But,
I feel we must be, because I do feel... I feel we must be, because I do feel that by episode 10... Oswald knows she works for Fish, and surely that's just going to be used against Fish. It must be.
Right.
Like, he'll string it along and do whatever he needs to do with her, manipulate her, get her to do what he wants her to do, or just tell Falcone. I don't know, like, one of those things is going to happen, surely, now that he knows, I feel.
Interesting. Any other points on Liza?
Possibly, maybe.
Any other points on Liza at all, guys?
I just don't like the get up.
Really?
She was, and the guy. This is the red-blooded male in me. And I'm sorry, they took her from what could have been a biker-esque. I know it's all to bring her back to make her look like the mother. But from what we assume with Falcone, anyway, he does have an additional. Or again, the comic book said he has this larger kind of soiree. So putting a biker-esque looking, or how she originally looked, in a nice cocktail dress could have worked. I think trying to make her more prim and proper, with the innocent doe-eyed look.
The lavender smell. Sorry, lavender. Like, would you ever fancy someone that smelled like lavender?
Exactly.
Like potpourri.
Yeah. Falcone's from a different generation, people. Remember this.
But as you said in an earlier podcast
lavender talc.
Yeah, Larry. As you said in an earlier podcast as well, he's very intelligent, and he hasn't gotten where he is and stayed where he is, like, by being really gullible, and wouldn't you see that coming a mile away?
Absolutely. That girl looks like my mother. Yeah. Maybe somebody's setting me up.
She's listening to her favourite song, and who knows a lot about my mother? Yeah, exactly. Like
she smells like Yardley's lavender talc.
Right, I think if that's everything on Liza, I think we're on to Chris for his final point about Gotham so far.
Yeah. It's Easter eggs.
Yeah.
And this is myself and Derek. Easter eggs. Less chocolatey, more comic booky. This show is packed. From the opening episode where we see the clock tower for Oracle, for those who don't know, the Jim Gordon's apartment has a large clock in it. Later on in the Batman universe, his daughter becomes Batgirl and is crippled by an unknown assailant who we all know who actually is, but I don't want to ruin it for people. And then becomes a wheelchair-bound hacker supreme called Oracle and works from that, what we can assume is that room called the Clock Tower, and that was there. It's
a great little Easter egg, wasn't it? Yeah. It's really surprising that they put something as as specific as that in the first episode. Yeah, it's quite cool though.
Yeah.
For nerds, sorry.
Yeah, and then the Venom. Venom, Viper became Venom. Venom is Bane's drug of choice.
Yeah.
And they even made it aerosol-like, so they could tie it into slightly if they wanted to the Chris Nolans.
That's right.
Like the painkillers. And I have hundreds of like these that I've loved. There's the penguin hiding in the freezer with ice all around him. So that was like the Iceberg Lounge.
Yeah.
And then Blue Man's pig face for Professor Pig.
Yeah.
And then I think I spoke about it very quickly. Blue Man dressed up like the Shadow.
Yes.
Harking back. And then there's been words of Dick Grayson, and then used in the same sentence, so that you're like, they just use word Dick, and then they use Grayson, and that's going to be Dick Grayson and Robin. It's this. There's even, and I think now I'm going to put it out there.
Okay.
And I'm not sure. And please write back with your theories or comment back. The silver box.
Okay. Oh,
that's
yes.
Selena, which is very pointedly shot onto the camera.
I've been trying to work out what this is, so I'm fascinated what this theory is going to be.
It has an owl on it with wings.
Okay. Oh, very good.
The Court of Owls.
Yeah. Right.
And I think they will bring the Court of Owls in it, because we already know that the Wayne Enterprises board is slightly corrupt. Well, not slightly corrupt. It is rotten to the core.
Right.
So I think we're going to start seeing elements of the Court of Owls come in, because you could take a very less kind of Court of Owls from the comic books, but make it more of a dark, mob-esque, like rich aristocrat kind of modus operandi.
Yeah. So in the comic books, the Court of Owls are in control of Gotham. They're in control of pretty much every single element of Gotham, from the police to the mayor to every single head of Gotham in the city. They have some form of control towards them. So it's an interesting idea that they could be the background behind everybody else that's behind Gotham, I suppose.
But it's also it's manipulating everything from the shadows, so if people aren't aware of their existence, that's their thing, is that it's almost an unknown evil presence.
Yeah, yeah. So
That kind of thing.
It might be a season 2 idea. Yeah.
I wonder whether one of the Easter eggs. I think we mentioned it for the episode 2, where the kids in Quillen Farmer, where they were being held, and there was this big chute down, presumably to the sewers, and there was a green sort of light coming up. I still wonder whether there's Killer Croc.
Right, you were fascinated. You can't wait.
Easter egg there. Yeah. And even then you've got the doll maker, which we now know has been cast. So there was some good Easter eggs, I think, in that. But I think that would be a really nice one if they could somehow get Killer Croc into Gotham. But it's probably too early within the timelines. I know they've got to be careful about timelines, but it was just chuck them down the hole, and get rid of the evidence. This idea that the killer crocodile would snaffle them all.
Absolutely. Irene, anything you've seen from the first half and with regards to kind of Easter eggs that you were intrigued about by?
The only thing I'm going to say that nobody has said already is Poison Ivy. When they were talking to Ivy and Selena seemed to know her, I was going, that'd be brilliant if they brought her up. Because the little face on her. When, I know it's the Claire Foley that plays her. She's just, I thought she was great.
Yeah.
She's kind of like really, really normal, chatting away, and then she's like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
It's great the way she did.
I love that face. I'm sorry this isn't a video podcast, but just for that look, Irene did a great Claire Foley there. Excellent.
But with Ivy, they say in, oh god, I can't remember which episode, when she actually says that she got put upstate with a new family.
Yeah.
So the one bit that we knew had to happen at some point was when she changed her name.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that she became Poison Ivy, that traditional name. So I think that's where they'll get the new name, and she'll start saying that her new name is X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Yeah.
My biggest one, and only because I'm reading a comic book at the moment called Starman, which is a fantastic one. If you get a chance, read it. Some of the best comic books ever written. Forth and Grundy was used in the pilot.
That's right.
Which is obviously Solomon Grundy, and a nice nod there, who in theory could come in. because he could be used just as a monosyllabic henchman that we don't find out much about. But just calling a guy called Grundy there would make me
have we learned the name of Penguin's henchman, the really hulking guy that sits around with the Penguin? Maybe that's Solomon Grundy. That's a possibility. Good catches, Chris. Good catches. I have one more point on my list for my top four. If everybody else has finished theirs, yeah, cool. My one point, and I can't go in an episode without mentioning them, is the Major Crimes Unit. René Montoya and Chris Allen. I've loved what they've done in the first 10 episodes of these characters. We read all of Gotham Central, as a lot of our listeners know, just before the series started, and they'd become very central to my interests with Gotham. We were reading it for the show, and we were really hopeful that they did something with these characters. What they did was fantastic. They started out the show with a really good back and forth between Crispus Allen and Harvey Bullock, where essentially Harvey was shown to be a terrible cop and hated by Crispus Allen. Having René Montoya be connected to Barbara Keane and have that triangle between Barbara Keane, René Montoya, and Jim Gordon has been great during the season. But having them start to investigate Jim Gordon and then turn around and be on his side and be the one that saves him from definitely death by Victor Zsasz was a fantastic moment, one of my favourite moments of the season. I love what they've done so far, and I'm hoping to see a ton more as the next part of the season plays out.
And again, I'm being argumentative.
Okay.
Montoya, yes.
Okay.
Montoya is, the character's been fleshed out perfectly. Obviously, with her lesbian side. The comic book fans will know that she then goes on to be the sidekick / love interest of Batwoman. So I think we may get later on, our new girlfriend may actually be named after Batwoman, so that they introduce her at some point as well. I think that'd be a nice fun Easter egg again.
Well, her current girlfriend's named after Batgirl, so being Barbara. Yeah.
So, but
I hope she doesn't date her daughter. That would be really weird.
I think, Crispus aside, character he's just not fleshed out.
Right.
And I think, if anything, we're going to see less and less and less of him.
Really?
And obviously they'll probably use that, they'll name drop the two of them in the conversation, but I think we'll only see Montoya for at least until they get an episode, which I probably won't be till the second season.
Right.
At this point, I'd say. And where they'll come in, the two of them will come in and be the central point, and they'll have to work with Jim. It could be in the second half.
I'm really hopeful that it will be. They are. Remember, they are full members of the cast, so it's quite likely that we will see them get a bit more to do, or see them a bit more in the second half of the season. Their names come up at the start of every single episode, so I'm hoping that they're not sidelined. I'm really looking forward to seeing some more in the second half of the season.
You be hopeful, I'll be doubtful.
Okay, interesting. Any other thoughts on the Major Crimes Unit?
Well, I'm with you. I just think it was great that as soon as I heard that these two characters were going to be in the show, and we had been looking at Gotham Central and seeing how their characters were drawn in Gotham Central, I was so pleased that they were in the show. I think, to disagree with Chris, I think the point of Crispus Allen is that he is loyal to a fault. I think that his reason for being there is to be the loyal detective partner to René Montoya, who, finds herself in difficult circumstances because she is a lesbian on the force. She's got a relationship with Barbara Keane. So for me, I agree, he's not necessarily as fleshed out, definitely, as René Montoya is in the show, but I think his role so far is to be that loyal sidekick. And there is also then the suggestion, I think, that Donald Logue mentioned, was that they were former partners previously. But I hope that they do stick around for the rest of the season. I think if the MCU's been introduced, it would be difficult if it's now dropped. There needs to be some explanation. They can't just drop an entire unit that was so central in the first half of the season. But I'm looking forward to see how they play, but also the other members of the GCPD. I think Captain Essen, I think Sabrina Guevara has really come on even more and more. She's much more of a character than she was in the first few episodes, and I really like her sort of balance of the politics and Jim's annoyance to like her superiors. I love the way she sort of balances those two. I want to see more of Harvey Bullock as well. Like the Spirit of the Goat really was great for me, and even just seeing that there's a Detective Alvarez, played by J.W. Cortez. That again, those GCPD members have potentially got some really great stories that can be played within the wider Gotham, with introducing different sort of villains. I think was really good. I love the way that initially for Montoya and Allen, Oswald was their kind of snitch, basically. That I thought was a really good little aspect to them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm just being argumentative.
All right, Irene, do you want to tell us what you're looking forward to for the next half of the season?
I was going to say that Harvey as well. Harvey and Jim's relationship more, if they get back together, or if they actually get to stay being partners, and hopefully they do. And then another, it's not really GCPD, but Edward Nigma.
Oh yeah,
I really like that they've started using him more, and he's like really good to watch. Like he's kind of funny, and obviously in a dark kind of a off the scale way, but you know, when he's answering the quiz questions to himself, even that a little bit, I thought that was really
that
good.
was really good fun when he was when he was dissecting the cadaver, wasn't it? When he started answering all the questions before the guy had even finished asking.
Yeah.
That was a good fun little point. Yeah,
He's been made full-time cast member now, hasn't he?
definitely. Yeah, he is full time. So we'll definitely see some more of Edward Nigma. He's a good little character. He's had some ups and downs for me in some of the earlier episodes. The mug with the question mark on it when was a bit too far. But I could see what they were doing. They're trying to have to highlight some things that everybody will know, I suppose. But but I like the actor. I think the actor's doing a really pretty good job.
I would have preferred if they had used the Riddler's real name, Edward Norbert. Norbert.
You see, you can't remember. Maybe they couldn't.
I think it's
remember.
he changes his name in the comic books to Edward Enigma. So when he becomes the Riddler later on.
Yeah.
So I would have preferred if they had done less of a nod to him, because he could have been that complete curveball.
Right.
Just having him named Edward and then dropping these crazy hints and kind of that he likes riddles, and you could have done a lot more with that character. But that I would have preferred. But I am happy as well that he's going to be in it more. I think he's going to be. Yeah, I think they'll show his darker side in the next half as well.
Yeah,
it's definitely, he's one of those people that hopefully wouldn't work with that often, but like, you know, where you're kind of going, you're on the edge, like,
right,
you know, everyone, you're like, morning, you know, he's like, morning, Jim, and Jim's the only one that says good morning.
Yeah.
Like, do you know, like, he's trying to obviously get connections going to people, and it's going to end up like the horror film May. Nobody responds, and it all ends horribly.
I think the thing I like as well is just that they've really played the long game so far with him. Like, they've not exposed him too much. They've, you know, had him there when he's needed to be.
Yeah, they've
and
managed
gradually,
him.
And hopefully then from 11 onwards, it will get bigger and bigger.
Right.
I think it's even just the fact that we now, you know, his role will get bigger and bigger. It's even just this idea that the Dollmaker was mentioned in episode 2, and we know he's been cast. That will come out again. You know, this underlying presence that doesn't need to be necessarily mentioned all the time, but it's there harking back, that connectivity between different episodes.
Yeah,
I think it's really good.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Chris, what are you looking forward to for the future of Gotham?
The comedian.
The comedian.
The comedian.
Okay.
I love Easter eggs, and I loved how they have shown, and they've already said that the showrunners and the writers have all said, yeah, we're going to keep giving you hints of who could be the Joker, or where his origins might come from, and obviously there's a lot of different, whether they want to go New 52 style, or whether they want to go back to the original, or one of the movies, how they'll make that Joker. But I think some of those teases have been fantastic, and it always will keep me watching of what I want, of how I can see it. So the comedian, on the stage in the pilot episode, the Harley Quinn burlesque dancers.
Yeah.
I think there's the guys on who are listening from the States will know that on social media there has been definitely a smack in your face hint of possible who one could be.
Yeah. We talked about that quite heavily on one of our most recent episodes. Cameron Monaghan has been cast in a role that is very likely to be a version of the Joker. We did our podcast about that a couple of weeks ago, and just to throw one back a little bit towards you, Chris, I specifically said we will not see the Joker on the show. We may see a character that will grow up to be the Joker, but we'll never see the Joker on Gotham. Just for yourself, I'd love to hear your opinion of whether you will see the Joker or not.
We will. We definitely will, because they have the guys. They have released a trailer recently to show that the Red Hood will be coming in the future, and they've cast him. And as a lot of your listeners will know, the Red Hood was one of the original incarnations of the Joker before he went a bit comedian clown-esque. He used to wear it to run as a more mob boss style. So we know that he's going to be in. Do I think he's going to be the Joker? No.
Right. Okay.
I think what we'll see is one of his underlings in that episode will be hinted to. And I think then they'll keep bringing him back into. I think he'll end up joining one of the mobs and just being this crazy, crazy guy. But what I honestly would love, is a left of field. So someone who's been in the show, or is probably introduced after episode 10 or 11, or sorry, after episode 11, who's going to be in the show for a couple of seasons. And you'll have things that will look like other people are the Joker, but actually in an episode they'll just blatantly throw a left of field, and you'll actually see him with a clown mask in his bedroom or something.
Right.
That's what I hope.
Interesting. Yeah. Or else it's Harvey Bullock, one or the other.
That'd be too left of field.
John, do you have something that you're looking forward to for the rest of the season?
More Alfred and Bruce, please. I loved what was promised about Alfred in relation to him being ex-military and so on, and we saw that in Lovecraft, where he was suave, sophisticated with Fish Mooney.
Double O Alfred.
Exactly. He knows how to handle a gun. He teamed up really well with Harvey Bullock. To me, that shows the extent to which Alfred can be really fleshed out beyond just being the butler at Wayne Manor and being, obviously we know him from that, and then as his partnership with Batman. But that's obviously down the line and not for this show. So to see him do that in Gotham with other members of the cast was really good, and I loved the way his relationship, as like Irene's mentioned, and in fact we've all mentioned, his relationship with Bruce and how that dynamic's been over the course of the season. So I really want to see how that develops more. I think it's something that could be really, really good. I don't kind of know where it'll go, whether he might team up with Donal Logue a bit more, whether...
Yeah, maybe that's Harvey's new partner now that Jim's been assigned to Arkham. Maybe Alfred might turn up in the GCPD.
So I don't think that will happen so much, but I do want to see how the two of them sort of develop in terms of their kind of like guardian and or protector relationship with the young Bruce, and I want to see them both out in the city of Gotham, the wider city of Gotham more, because again, even when Bruce was out at the Gotham Academy and that whole interaction with Tommy Elliott as well, Cole Vallis plays him there, yeah, then that I loved as well. That really sort of again develops the young Bruce Wayne, and I think David Mazouz as well has just been really, really good.
Really standout character. Irene, what's your thoughts on more Alfred and Bruce?
Yep, they were on my list as well.
Yeah.
I just think whether the relationship will settle more into like the way it's been for the last couple of episodes. But then you see, even in episode 10, like it's different again when he thinks he's in danger and he's really protective of him, but they don't go all soppy when they find each other. It's
a lovely drawn piece between the two of them, wasn't it? Yeah, really enjoyed that as well.
I agree. I want to see more of them, and I think we'll get more of them because of Bruce's wall of crazy theories
Yeah.
and that we've seen a couple of times. I think Alfred's going to start investigating with him, so hopefully we'll get to see more of Wayne Enterprises and maybe a young Bruce going to board meetings, because we now know that the board is quite corrupt. So I'm hoping to see, double O Alfred.
Yeah.
So we'll see him in his bringing the young Wayne into these meetings and helping him navigate the craziness of the Wayne Enterprises. But then I think, I hope that, we'll get these team-ups as well, which is an interconnection, which a board member has been involved in something shady, and then Gordon and Bullock investigate, and unfortunately Bruce is captured again, and then Alfred must get in.
Very good. You see, Chris is writing episodes for us and everything. Well done.
Give me a job!
One thing I think we've all kind of talked about it, really, the one thing I'm really looking forward for the next half is honestly just getting more connected and tied in episodes. They did it a couple of times, and one thing I do know, obviously we still follow the news, we still have hundreds of people on Twitter telling us about episodes there that we're not seeing yet, unfortunately. But we do know there is definitely a two-parter coming up in the second half of the season, which I'm really looking forward to seeing. An episode that's spread over, a full episode that's spread over 2 weeks. It's going to be great to actually see something like that. The ones that have let me down are the ones that are the standalones in the first half of the season. So the more the things connect, the more the things that the whole of the city of Gotham is built up, is going to be something that I'm really looking forward to. March can't come quickly enough for me, definitely. Guys, I think that's the overall points about the first half of the season so far. Yeah, everybody happy so far? Great. I think that's everything we wanted to talk about for the first half of the season. Listeners, thank you very much for listening. As always, you can contact us at feedback@gothamtvpodcast.com. Please email us in your thoughts about the first half of the season and your hopes for the next half as soon as you want to.
Remember, you can subscribe or follow us on iTunes, Player FM, or Stitcher, or any other good podcast catcher.
Yeah, you can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at Gotham TV Podcast. And I want to say a very special thank you to Irene and Chris who joined us for this episode. Irene, do you want to tell people how they can find you again?
I'm on Twitter at Ailby, AILBY. I'll be part of the Defenders podcast as well.
Excellent. And Chris?
Yep, you can find me on www.theeffect.net. That's THEEFFECT.net. Or you can find me on Twitter as well at Mr. Chris_Jones.
Very good, very good. Aaron and Chris will be joining us for the Defenders TV podcast, a podcast about the Marvel Universe this time. We've done a couple of episodes so far. It will start off with the Netflix Daredevil series, a 13-episode show, which will be focused on the character of Daredevil. You can find us on iTunes at Defenders TV Podcast to listen to the first 2 episodes so far. Aaron and Chris are going to be joining us for the actual episodes that are of the Netflix show. We're really looking forward to having you guys on board for those episodes. Thanks very much for listening, everybody, and come back and join us again when the show starts in March.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Gotham TV Podcast. Do not cross Alan and Montoya.
I'm just being argumentative.
Excellent. I'm not going to stop saying excellent, but we'll leave that one.
Excellent.
Aaron and Chris will be joining us for the Defenders podcast. The Defenders. God.
Excellent.
Thanks very much for listening.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Everybody happy with that?
This is my city.